Thank you for coming on to the Be Absolutely Indispensable podcast. I got you on because you're one of the most human humans I know. So I just want to say thank you first of all, and also, so I reckon people need to know a little bit about you. So maybe tell us your story around setting up a social enterprise streetwear company called Homie, how you came up with it, and what it's all about.
Oh, thanks, mate. That's very kind of you to say, and right back at you. Always enjoy catching up, whether it's in this sort of forum or obviously socially as well. But you're one of the great people in my life, so mate, wholeheartedly reciprocated. So a little bit about me, I guess. Yeah, I was the CEO, but I still remain the co-founder of Homey, and it's been around for about 10 years. And well, we're an organisation that supports young people who are affected by homelessness or hardship with skills, confidence, and experiences to be more work ready and better prepared for their futures. I guess in layman's terms, we sort of sell t-shirts and we use the profits to provide employment opportunities to young people who just need a chance and an opportunity. So that's kind of our shtick. And I guess myself personally, it wasn't a world that I was familiar with. I guess I sort of was studying at RMIT doing a communications degree, and I met one of the other co-founders, Marcus, who was, or he still remains, very talented creative and photographer, and etc. And we started this project together. I guess fusing our respective skill sets at that time to create this project, which I guess, in a roundabout way, a number of things happened, which led to it becoming a streetwear label, and it's been amazing. I guess a decade now of Homey, and I think it's a really prominent brand, and it's respected for the quality of the garments now, which is awesome, just as much as the quality of the impact in the work that we do, which is awesome. I think that's an amazing accomplishment, and it's been really nice for me, I guess, having become a father during that time and having two young children, and then also supporting my wife who has her own econ business. I've certainly transitioned from sort of uni student to I guess I would call myself, or at the time, a professional problem solver in my role, to
Yeah.
now I guess somewhat of a stay-at-home dad, primary care. I still work and support my wife's business now, and then also behind the scenes still support Homey in some capacity, but they're very competent and capable without me, which again is probably a good reflection of it's where it's gotten to, and its evolution, which is it's awesome to have been a little piece of the puzzle and part of the story.
Yeah, awesome. And the reason, obviously, I start this podcast absolutely indispensable because everywhere you look, it's AI, AI. You got to use AI for everything. And I'm feeling like a lot of people are actually losing a bit of themselves and their humanity. So, how do you see the future of AI and how humans can stay relevant as every tech bro in the world says AI is just going to do everything?
Yeah, good question. I guess I can see both ends of the spectrum, if you will, and I think it's about harnessing the good and minimizing the bad, if you will, is probably the way that I sort of see, like anything, right? It's like I mean, I'm going to coin that term from Spider-Man. Great power comes great responsibility, right? It's
Yeah.
like that's almost with anything that has the ability to do good and or other. So I guess from my lens, like we work, we're in a human economy with Homey, and it's very much about working with individuals and people, and trying to create a positive influence on lives and livelihoods. And I don't know if that can be done, via interfacing with screens and that digital space per se. I think there's definitely some value adds and some ways of harnessing, whether that's kind of through delivery of education modules and access to resourcing and optimizations. I think like there's elements that could make what we do sharper and leaner per se in terms of the administrative side. But I mean, our work is face to face, human to human, and I think it's a lot easier. And everyone would agree it's much greater to if you can get a coffee in person. Obviously, a phone
Mm.
call is the next best thing, than an email, etc. But that personal component is obviously really pertinent to the work that we do. So I don't know, like in terms of changing the trajectory and the livelihoods of individuals, in the work that we do can be done or replicated the same way when it's with a
Well, it's interesting because what you guys do, because correct me if I'm wrong, but you sort of put people through a pathway for people who have been experiencing homelessness, and the money that you generate helps train people, and they often come and work at Homey, and
Yes.
that's giving people a purpose. So, how do you feel like when you see someone their progression from where they've been to where they get to? How does that make you feel? And any great stories that you could share about people who are doing these awesome things
Yeah, yeah,
because of people buying t-shirts?
for sure. Yeah, I mean, I like obviously preface it's like absolute like full credit to themselves first and foremost. Like
Yeah.
they obviously do the work. We try and provide some frameworks to support people from point A to B, and we're a piece of the puzzle, as I say. I think work very deeply and collaboratively with specialist homelessness services, with other prominent sort of Australian retail brands, and have tried to create an infrastructure and a framework that is conducive to helping people get the best out of themselves. Is very much where the impetus is. So for us, it's always been about priding ourselves on what our logical value add is, and knowing that we can't do everything for everyone, but we can do something for someone, and where can we concentrate to get the greatest return and outcomes and value for that individual. So it's interesting because people, obviously all of us have different strengths and development areas, and in terms of how you quantify success, like obviously there's sort of the objective sort of quantitative outcomes that we've had, which again are sort of almost industry leading with the cohort that we work with, which is brilliant, so that's a credit. But at the same token, like we talk about this notion of like distance travel, and there are some individuals who have far greater barriers, have had, more trauma, etc., sort of in their past. And sometimes it's about, maybe they haven't made it from A to B, like in that sort of objective sense, but the distance that they've traveled from, point A and that journey they've been on, bearing in mind what they might have experienced in the past, is sometimes even more profound,
Mm.
in terms of growth and development than actually a completion of the training program that we set up, etc. So there's definitely how do you quantify success? I think it's different for everybody, and that's a really important metric for us, is understanding that is like, yeah, someone may have actually had the past couple of years were unable to sort of function per se in society, and somewhat bedridden or whatever it may have been, and they've actually been able to front up to a workplace, connect with
Mm.
people, make these inroads, and that is actually quite profound. So, yeah, really priding ourselves on that component, and I always say it's not what we do per se, it's the way we do it, which is kind of the thing that I'm most proud of about Homey and our approach. So, so that's a little bit about sort of our, logic. But I guess in terms of, the cohort that we work with, as I say, results are, sort of the top end of sort of industry, in the sense that with our graduates, of our program, I think we have, a success rate in terms of, again, defining it like post 12 months of our sort of support, which we're trying to track obviously well beyond that as well. We have over 80% of those participants either engaged in further education, learning, and or employment, and independent housing. So those kind of insights, where it's great to know that obviously we've really tried to focus on quality over quantity, and that deep concentrated work is actually what yields these outcomes. So yeah, that's a bit about our tact. And we obviously want to ensure that we can continue to evolve that and work with more people, but also not compromise the quality of the delivery of what we've tried to create.
I mean, it's such an amazing thing that you've achieved and are building. Well, you've built already, and it's going to grow even if you're not on there day to day. And I'm excited to hear what else you're doing in the future. But just on that growth, like having that purpose of trying to help people and helping people, how did you come to the point where you could balance that purpose, which is everyone wants to do something good that helps people, but also the commercial reality of you got to be profitable, you got to get the stock, you got to get the designers, all that stuff. How do you balance those things? You don't want to get too greedy and just make profit, 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 because you need to also put it into things. Like, how do you find that balance as a human being, and now as a dad, as a husband, as a co-worker, as a human? Like, what's the key ingredient that you found to unlock that?
It's challenging. I mean, like the reality being, obviously, in our space, without any profit, there's no purpose. So
Mm.
we are a not for profit, we are a charity, but we're trying to make as much profit as possible, because, as you say, 100% of those, are able to be reinvested back into program delivery. Like that's sort of, the the stick, if you will, and the carrot are the same thing, right? Like we want to make as much money as possible to be able to continue to grow and evolve our offerings. So it has been challenging. I think, like in terms of the commercial realities, like we to actually get it up and running into a place of viability, albeit still very challenging in this economy, and all of us being impacted by cost of living crisis and discretionary spend not being as fruitful as it may have previously been, etc. Like I think we were voluntary for over 6+ months, and then kind of drawing very modest wages commensurate with kind of obviously our I guess operating budget. That being said, the beauty of running a not for profit and having our unique kind of composition and configuration has been that in our constitution, like we have a board of directors. Although myself and some others were co-founders and founding members of the organisation, we set up a board of directors voluntary role. At the time when I was CEO, I was operating in an executive capacity, the others being non-executive. And although I had helped start this thing, and it was sort of our organisation, that group would determine what was a fair and appropriate sort of remuneration for said role. And at the same token, you'd love it to be again sort of at market for not-for-profit industry, but it's certainly taken us a long time to try and get close towards that. There's many concessions that everybody's making, and I guess like the social currency and kind of concessions that are made because of the belief in the investment and being our thing. But that has evolved, which is great. And we also believe that like you need to be able to both attract and retain talent, and we need quality operators to be able to deliver quality offerings. So that's been an ongoing piece. And again, I think we've created some firm building blocks to be able to have that development, but that's been tricky. And then also, as you say, like kind of the impact delivery side and ensuring we can actually do what we say we're going to do. So you're trying to balance all these things, and then cash flow. People say cash is king. I think two things like that I think create a successful business is like cash flow is king in the business game, and creating value. Value today, value tomorrow, and I think we do that, and why we've been able to endure. And it's been quite an interesting time for the sector, and a lot of social enterprises having to either amalgamate or sometimes even actually, wrap up operations. Is that I think we've created this intrinsic value, both from a deep appreciation of the quality of the work that we deliver from an impact lens, but then also the fact that the apparel has really evolved, and it's essentially like a standalone bona fide streetwear label that's well respected. The garments are beautifully designed. It's evolved with the times. So I think that's been a bit of a secret sauce, but notwithstanding, it's hard. Like, in terms of profitability, I think we've been able to continue to bridge that gap between what we can bring in ourselves commercially, and obviously we've been able to open an additional store and other offerings. But at the same token, a lot of contributions and concessions are made to enable that to transpire for us. We aren't able to do that for our own bat as yet, but our own sort of driven income versus contributions from philanthropy and high net worth individuals, etc. That's absolutely sort of, I guess, in some ways, enabled us to continue to operate for this period. And I talk about this idea of like a runway and building a plane while it's taking off. So like we're doing it. So it's like we're on the runway. The plane is, literally the wheels are in motion. It's happening. We're trying to also find those spare parts and get this fully realized bird in the sky.
You probably don't have any parachutes though.
No, parachute. And maybe sometimes people say like it's actually gone off the cliff, and you're just trying to like in that time still. Yeah, but I say that sort of enabled us to that runway. It has been paved through those in-kind donations and contributions. Has enabled us more time, more space to be able to grow the commercial side. So it's a tricky game. Like it's not easy. Again, if we had our time, again, potentially, like, would it have been like just like one product, right? Or like something really simple versus streetwear, which I think it's been a, double-edged sword for us. And I think the pros outweigh the cons, because it's a medium that I think is really progressive. And it's always been something that I think has been daring and kind of a bit punk and a bit sort of, and that's sort of been our shtick, is like, again, this innovative solution to a long-standing issue, and doing things differently and not being afraid to be bold and brave and try something new. So I think again that's been a bit of a secret weapon for us, is actually leaning into that. Albeit it's challenging as well because like again, you cash outlay and purchasing stock, and then also having to forecast, and you're buying product and investing in I guess these assets, without the promise of a return. It's like we've got to generate that through marketing and those other activities. So it's this funny sort of dynamic where you're really trying to find that balance, and effectively manage your cash and your assets, because like we're forecasting, we're having to make sure we're ahead of the game. Our design team are brilliant, obviously one of them being the other co-founder, or one of, in Marcus. So he's got a great eye, very in touch with the sort of cultural zeitgeist far more than myself, to be able to ensure that we are ahead of the game. So sorry, that's quite an elongated answer, but I think it's important to kind of paint the many considerations that go into trying to run the show.
Well, just
And
on
let
that, like just talking about how you're speaking then, like so 10 years ago, you're just kind of coming out of uni. The things that you're saying now, would you have ever imagined that you're talking about all this sort of technical stuff and
oh, no
all
way,
that
there's
sort of
still a
stuff?
lot,
Like, and
there's still
how do you do
a
that learning and stuff? How did you, let's go back to the beginning. Like, first of all, how did you come up with the idea of
mm,
Homie? And how did you actually get it into fruition? Because everyone's got ideas, like squillions of ideas, but actually
yeah,
making it happen and doing something that's still helping people 10 years later is pretty amazing achievement. You shouldn't undersell yourself ever, because it's amazing the amount of people you've helped, amount of press you've got, this talk around homelessness because of what you guys do, but also making people look cool about themselves is great. So how did you come up with the idea, and how did you actually get off the ground? Because you talked about all the connections you've got, like the in-kind donations and philanthropists.
yeah.
Like, how do you make those things happen over time?
Mm. Lot of help from yourself as well. So please, I need to acknowledge, in terms of some of that awareness and fundraising has certainly come off your bat. But it's a good question. I think like the short answer is like those sort of values that you sort of learn, lucky enough to at home and then at school and education, like treating other people how you want to be treated, like just and manners and respect and please and thank you, and not being afraid to ask for help. So I think those are kind of been
Mm,
the short answer in terms of some of the I guess tools that we've tapped into. But everyone has the capacity to use those. I feel like that's also an important message, is that they don't cost anything and they can actually go a very long way. But I guess Homie itself sort of evolved from when I met Marcus. We were on a fundraising bicycle ride for anti-child trafficking, riding from Vietnam to Cambodia.
as
Um,
you do.
yeah, well, yeah, it was pretty. It was through some mutual mates. Yeah, a bit off the beaten
Mhm.
track, if you will. But it was an awesome
Even
experience.
just while you're on that, like, how did you come to decide to do that? Like, I'm interested in
Yeah.
the origin story of why you have that want to help people, because
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of people
Okay.
don't have that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Good question. Yeah, look, I think like a combination of things, like just like family sort of upbringing, values,
Yep.
and education and school, and really involved in those community sort of activations. And I guess also felt good when you did those things. Like I know
Yeah.
this is notion of like talk about altruism, but no, I also do. I try and make a conscious effort to do some good because it makes me feel good as well. And you shouldn't
Mm.
feel bad about that. I think that's like it's a great thing. And I guess some mutual friends had created this initiative, and I was doing some I guess voluntary work through my media comms degree at this organization called Childwise, and Zora Lorian sort of, yeah, I guess like anti-child trafficking was sort of the office
Mhm.
in Cambodia, but obviously a lot around sort of protection of young children from some of these heinous things that can happen. And there's two guys, and they'd done a bike ride previously from London to Melbourne, and they did it in like 11 months. Awesome, like really fun sort of larrikins and young fellas, and it was just one of those things that Marcus was a mutual friend of them, and I met them when I was doing this voluntary work for Childwise. They were saying, oh, like we're going to this this bike ride, and we're going to do this. We're going to get everyday people to come along for it, and I was like, oh, I'd love to come. Like, this sounds amazing.
Mm.
Just sort of like, a coincidence and good timing. And, where I was at life, I was just living at home and, working some part-time jobs and just trying to, you know, um, exist and enjoy my 20s. And anyway, so just went on that trip. And I think that was really formative because I met Marcus, obviously, which
Mhm.
was definitely part of it. And what we really loved about that was that we, we raised funds and awareness for just one school in a really remote region of Cambodia. So just rather than this idea of I'd previously done these fundraisers at school, etc., and some of these large entities and organisations, these like global conglomerates, it just felt a lot more grassroots and sort of tangible and transparent in terms of like we're raising money for this, it's going to go towards that, and probably the insight that was most pertinent was that we had these ideas in our own head. Oh, well, we could raise money for new uniforms, or we can get them, X, Y, Z, some new resources. But what was interesting was when we actually asked the question, well, what do you guys really need? And some of the
Mm.
feedback was quite interesting. So they said, well, we actually are really struggling with teachers. Like what's happening is a very small community, very small school. And in our country, what's happening is that quality teachers are sort of being poached, from these more rural areas into, the big cities, the big smoke, because it's, for them, greater remuneration and, standard of living, etc. So if we don't have teachers, we don't have a school. If we don't have a school, our children are more vulnerable to exploitation.
Mm.
And that's where, it can happen. So just kind of joining the dots there, and it made a lot of sense. Like, oh yeah, like that's really interesting that what we thought may have been the best way to have an impact actually wasn't. So yeah, it was interesting that I guess our own ideas and what we thought would, be the most impactful were quite different to, I guess, the feedback that came through. And that was really insightful. So I think we were really buoyed by that experience and thought, well, okay, maybe, when we came home, like we should try and do something. We're really energized by that. It felt really great and really logical. And I guess this added bonus of like knowing that, okay, we'd raised, a good amount of money. I think it was like $40,000 as a collective. And that would obviously go, a bit further in Cambodia at the time and probably still. And just to know that like we were really using that money wisely and it was really savvy in terms of the logic of what we're actually deploying in terms of additional resourcing. So that was really cool, and I think we just loved it. Like it was so much fun to have a great time, and these things don't have to be like mutually exclusive. It was this idea that we could have a great time and also
Mhm.
do good um, in the process. So anyway, I guess we from there came home and I was still studying and we're in the city and I was at RMIT and Marcus was working in the CBD and just thought, well, why don't we just try and tackle something here? And I guess homelessness felt like a logical starting place. So what we did was just have a conversation with someone who we saw was living rough on Swanson Street and just got down to their level, shook their hand, looked in the eye, and we had that sort of fear and trepidation. We're like, oh, what are we doing? Like we're just,
Mm.
but at the same token, we were curious. We're like, we just want to learn about their story and what we could do to make an impact. And again, that was just really insightful. Some of the feedback that came through from this individual around just sort of feeling invisible and every day sort of
Mm.
being the same, and then just these questions around like, well, what could we actually do to help? Like, what would make a difference? And again, it was really profound in terms of just one of the biggest challenges is feeling lonely and feeling invisible. And I guess for us, we felt like maybe we can create a platform where we can actually try and highlight some of these challenges and educate the community on ways that they could get involved that aren't too onerous. And I guess that's also fed through to sort of the homey, sort of approach nowadays as well. So we decided to create a Facebook page, and I think we, in some ways, my belief is that every new idea is an adaptation of old ones. So Humans in New York was still a very big page. It was quite a big page at the time and a movement, and we decided to create a Facebook page called Homelessness of Melbourne. And that was sharing the stories of these people that we were meeting living rough, and we were just going in uni breaks and lunch breaks from Marcus's work and having a chat with people and collecting their story. And Marcus would take a beautiful portrait and we just share it. So it's in their own words, just online. And I guess that gained a lot of traction, a lot of feedback, a lot of engagement. And I guess that was something, it was awareness raising. But then this idea of, well, what else and what more could we do? And then came about, I guess, this physical event we decided to do, which was an initiative that had started in South Africa called the Street Store. So it was like a global movement. Essentially, you go online, they give all the resources, and you can create like a cardboard thrift shop, if you will, for lack of a better term.
Mm.
So we decided to do that, and did Australia's first ever one in Fed Square in December of 2014, and invited our community online, our supporters, and support services that we'd engage with, and people that we'd met to come and have this kind of experience. And we tried to create like a dignified shopping experience was sort of the premise. So I had members of the community bring either brand new clothing or good quality clothing that they were willing to part with. A lot of brands donated stuff, food. Barbers came and volunteered. It was just sort of this
Awesome.
opportunity to create a nice moment just before Christmas time. And it worked really well. Like I think there were so many things that were fantastic about it overall. Again, like the pros outweighed the cons, but there were definitely things that we felt we could refine. It was obviously in a public space. It's very open, and just to try and create that sense of dignity, we thought we could do it better. But one, additional insight that came through was that there were a lot of young people who came along, and we thought, oh wow, like probably more than the older gen, and there's something here, and clothing and young people and wanting to do it more permanent, not just like a one-off, was kind of the next step. So we were still doing this Facebook page. We've done this event, and then we sort of put it out to the universe. Oh, we want to try and like do a clothing store. Like, what if we create a label and a clothing store? And we did a crowdfunding campaign at the time. So yeah, that's kind of where the brand sort of evolved. Because in crowdfunding, well, at the time, you had to sort of provide rewards for people that were pledging. And ours was like the logo from our Facebook page, sort of on some t-shirts. And then I think we made a bit of noise, got a bit of media traction. Like MX was used to be a great
Yeah, yeah.
publication free when you're doing the transport. I miss it actually, and we got a lot of coverage there. And I think the project picked up our story, and only because I reached out to them and I just sent them an email and said, "Hey, we're doing this." And it was funny, like that day, within under an hour, I got a phone call from a producer saying, "Hey, we were just literally having a meeting about wanting to cover something in regards to homelessness, just given sort of coming into winter time, etc." So it's like really fortuitous that you've got in touch. So again, like just these kind of coincidences, but also being proactive, and can't hurt to send an email even if you don't hear back. But in that case, they came back within an hour, which was amazing. So that gave us that kind of mass exposure. And then Melbourne Central Shopping Centre saw it, and they got in touch and said, "Hey, like we'd be keen to give this a go. We can
Wow.
offer for a month at a heavily discounted rate." So we thought, why not? And again, didn't have any business, pedigree, or at that time clothing, or fixtures and fittings, or point of sale software, or anything like that. But I think we just, we had passion, and we were learning logic as we went along. And things just evolved from there. It was one of those things that just we started, had a vision. We said at the end of the month we'll sort of do that event again, but do it in the store and kind of refine it a bit more. And yeah, always different people came to the party, and we had donations of clothing from brands. We printed some of those t-shirts again and sold them in the store. And sort of had friends that came and did artwork. And so it was just like this labor of love from the community. And then, yeah, just evolved from there. I think it was supposed to be a month. We got extended, fortunately. And then it was like about a year that we were trading. And again, as I say, trying to manage part-time jobs and everything else in that time just to keep it going, and chipping in here and there. And then yeah, it kind of evolved. And I guess we had the VIP days, was sort of that emulation and that evolution of that sort of street store initiative. And we decided every month we would do that. And we do like a 1-for-1 initially. So you buy a t-shirt, we donate a t-shirt, you write a note, and we put it on our wall of support in the store. And I guess from there, what happened was we had some youth-specific services come in, and young people saying, "Hey, like, had an awesome day, really fun, but I need a job. I'm finding it really hard to
Mm.
get work. I love this clothing, and just no one will give me a chance. Got nothing on my resume, got no work experience, and like I just don't know how to get from A to B." And I guess that's where we came in and thought, well, yeah, like, well, we're running a retail store, we need staff. Maybe we can sort of try and create something here and some
Mm.
opportunities. So it sort of started with like paid casual employment, and we were learning kind of together how to fold t-shirts, etc., off each other. But then we saw the real value in terms of, yeah, I guess like the intangible kind of offerings and the soft skill development, etc. And then decided to kind of put some more framework around that, and sort of, yeah, firm up a legitimate program and engage an RTO to sort of deliver a curriculum. And that's what became sort of the Pathway Alliance, which is now this kind of fully realized, yeah, education and employment program. It's deeply collaborative. We deliver a Cert 3 in retail, sorry, or business now. Actually, it was retail. It's again evolved into business, sort of more encompassing. So co-designed, co-delivered, made it youth-specific in terms of the leaning and the learning in terms of, how we sort of deliver, and then working with other leading Australian retailers, and sort of upskilling and empowering them to be able to provide these opportunities. And again, not as scary or onerous as one may think. So a lot of the time it was sort of trying to remove the stigma as well and educate. And then when the young people would actually be sort of placed into those work environments, just how impactful it was for their own team, and saying, wow, like, morale's gone up, exponentially,
Mhm.
activity, because people are trying to set a really positive influence, and not taking their own, opportunities for granted, etc. So just the ripple effect of that. And then, yeah, it's obviously sort of just supposed to go for a month, became a year, went out to Brunswick Street, and decided to sort of, create a flagship store, and moved out of, a shopping centre. And then from there,
So
it's,
how
yeah.
did you how did how did you get that flagship store in Brunswick Street? Like, how does that
Well,
come about?
literally just, looking at real estate online, obviously a lease agreement, but managed to, we secured that, and took that on, probably with not as much cash in the bank as we may have sort of.
So take me back to that moment where you're signing the lease and you're like,
Yeah.
I'm imagining, just hearing you, you're like, we kind of don't know what we're doing, but we know what we want to do. This is a big
Yes.
step. We've signed this big lease. We haven't got maybe enough money that we thought, but we
Mm.
just got to make this happen. Like, how does that,
Yeah.
like, how do you feel when you've got the keys and you walk in? Like, take
Well,
us
it
back
was
to
like,
that moment.
yeah, no, you're right. I was like trust with like, so we knew we had to get out. So we were being moved around the shopping center, and
Okay.
like that was just the reality of it. Is sort of,
Yeah.
nothing was sacred, and other brands are coming in, and we were obviously getting things at a concession. But just felt that okay, the brand's probably at a place now where it can stand on its own 2 feet.
Mm.
And again, Marcus being a lot cooler than myself and sort of in touch with, again, sort of,
The
yeah,
youth.
what the kids are doing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hey, hello for little kiddies. When it was at that Steve Buscemi meme where he's dressed up as a skateboarder at high
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
Like, that's me, but whereas Marcus is kind of actually, got his finger on the pulse. So I remember him just saying, I'm telling you, man, like this is a spot north side, like either Smith Street or Brunswick Street. Like this is where it's at. There's art, there's culture, there's that,
Mm.
so it's a tourist kind of hotspot. And this site that had come up was on the corner of Brunswick and Johnson Street. So really iconic. I think it was actually it was the old post office in Fitzroy, like the first,
Okay.
building in that area. So it had a lot of culture, a lot of history. And the bottom floor was available. There'd been a lot of different, groups that had to go at it, like it's like a hardware store at one point, like just different things. And anyway, I honestly just backed him in, and he said, "I'm telling you, this is the spot. Like this is where it's going to actually go." And it worked. So as I say, we sort of had just enough, but obviously you had to start trading and trading well to make it happen. And fortunately, that was what transpired. We kind of took that risk, and fortunately it paid off. And obviously we've been there for just under 10 years, and obviously then now moved back into the city, and now working with the Emporium, and having that secondary store, which is a beautiful store, and sort of like an elevated kind of experience. So it's funny, like how do these things happen? I think fundamentally like pure intent, sort of our core values, integrity, and creativity, and just these things that we decided to sort of pride ourselves on. And then I think that just almost like in some way emanates and sort of permeates this sort of movement that people want to get involved in, because of they can sort of see the intention, and there's no kind of secret. It's always been very transparent about what we're trying to achieve and how we're going and what we need. I think just bred kind of people putting their hand up and saying, "Oh, well, we can help out with this," and just being really clear on what are your requirements. And we've been really fortunate. There's so many things that could have gone, every which way, and sort of, lines in the sand and sort of forks in the road. But I think fortunately, like staying true to our values, and as I say, like these things that I mentioned off the top, like just like good manners and respect,
Mm.
and not burning bridges, and just these things again, like it just we all have the capacity to do. It's been amazing how they've held us in such great stead, and common decency goes a long way.
Well, it's interesting as well. Like, I haven't heard the full story from you before. Like, I knew about the bike ride, but hearing you say, seeing the tangible benefit of what you do, because you could have started Homey and go, we're just going to donate money to a charity. But you've gone,
Mm.
because of the experience of talking to people, you've gone, well, actually, let's help people into the store, get training. So you're actually having a real connection. You're seeing an actual, real proper benefit instead of just, we've making up a number. We've raised $100,000 in the last 6 months, just giving it away to a charity. But you're
Yeah,
doing something that's tangible. So it also helps grow it and grow it and grow it, which is really interesting.
thank you. Yeah, well, look, try. They've certainly tried to. I think again, we didn't have the answer at any point in time. I think we had a
Yeah.
sense of what we wanted to try and do. It was more like we don't know what we want to do, but we know how we want to do it, and how we want to go about it. And it's evolved. As I say, initially it was, we would have any, sort of local homes of service. It then sort of became specific to young people, because we felt again like there
Mm.
was representation here that we wanted to try and capture, and also probably more, I guess, closely associated with sort of our brand and aesthetic, etc. But that youth culture was like, well, let's work with young people, because we know that that is sort of a bigger issue within the issue itself. We know we can't do everything, and having to sort of reconcile that and understand that this is a very complex issue, and there are many considerations and people doing amazing work at different ends of the spectrum. But it felt like there was this gap and this opportunity for us to really tap into helping move someone into that sort of independent living situation, via opportunity. So that was sort of a good sort of aha moment, if you will. We're like, oh, okay, well, we know we can't do it all. Let's try and really refine our focus and be really intentional about who we're working with and what we're actually doing for them, and understanding what our strengths were and are, being, people that haven't had, we're not trained clinically, etc. But we can work with organisations that are. But
Mm,
they're saying, hey, well, we can do that, but we find it hard to get people into vocational sort of learning and
mm,
education and employment. And we felt that there was an opportunity for us to do that. Also, being limited in our capacity, we spoke about sort of our operating budget, etc., and also trying to grow that. But knowing that we can't do it all,
mm,
we know that retail is, its biggest employer of young people in our country. It is a wonderful vehicle for people to, and a stepping stone, but sometimes a career, but sometimes also just that kind of, launching pad. And why can't we be that? But then also be that example and influence to others. And that's our, I guess we have tried to tap into. Well, there's already these, amazing organizations and businesses that have far greater infrastructure and systems and processes than ourselves and capacity to provide employment. What if we can actually champion this notion of empathetic employment within these workplaces, remove those barriers, give them that support that they need, show them that it's actually not as difficult as they think it might be, albeit, there's always challenges with anything, but we can be there to support them. And I guess that's also been great. It's like not thinking that we have to have the monopoly and like open,
mm.
100 stores around the world, etc. I mean, cool, that might be great one day, but at the same token, we can help be that sort of spark that lights the fire, and maybe we're a better place, we believe, to actually leverage these opportunities within these workplaces, because they want talent and hard workers, and the young people that we work with have that in spades, and resilience and life experience. Like, often they have had such profound life experience that it's just so invaluable to a workplace. So yeah, I think everyone's
Well,
reaping the benefits.
well, I also think it's powerful as well, like because you're a streetwear brand, it's not just people donating to charity. People buy your t-shirt, your clothes, and they wear it, and then they're a walking billboard for you. And if someone
That's
says,
right.
"Oh, that's a really cool t-shirt. Where is it from?" So, "Oh, it's from Homie," and they're going to tell the story of how this is helping someone, which is
For sure.
the depth of
Yeah.
help is so great. Like, you probably have, look good and feel good at the same time, because that's literally what people
Yeah.
are doing.
Well, two birds, one stone. I think that's
Yeah.
always been the thing, like trying to be really savvy, and there's a lot of intention behind like everything that we do and how we present.
Mm,
So even the apparel itself and sort of the messaging and whatnot, it's very much we try not to have it be in your face, right? It doesn't sound like anti-homelessness charity. It's obviously these like kind of slogans and these, be kind, and sort of these ideals and these notions, which obviously, yeah, certainly are associated with what we're trying to achieve. But I think there's a lot of tact and yeah, intent behind how we go about it. And as we've always said, like coming back to that experience that we'd had, like you shouldn't feel bad about trying to do good, and you should feel good when you
mm,
do good. So I think that was also the thing, was that, well, what if people can actually get something for themselves and give something? When they get something as well, they become an advocate, as you say, and like a walking billboard, but they've also contributed through that purchase. And then sometimes we obviously make a conscious effort to educate every person that we, are able to interact with, that they may become a champion and actually then feed that back to someone else. I think the cool thing again, and sort of why we have been able to exist as long as we have, is that there is this added layer now of the apparel having really evolved and elevated to a place where it is like a legitimately, cool brand. And often it's actually the byproduct now is like, oh, like this looks amazing. And then the added bonus of hearing about what we actually do is sort of like the cherry on top, versus
mm.
inversely, it was probably, hey, like buy this t-shirt because it does this. Now it's, oh, this is a sick t-shirt, and
Yeah.
actually, yeah, even cooler because of what I've just learned about it after I purchased it or whatever it may be. So it's cool that we've been able to, yeah, again, iterate to that place.
Then I know we're sort of wrapping up now because we've both got to get on to something. But I was in the name of the podcast is absolutely indispensable, which is a different phrasing of AI. So from your perspective, you've been a uni student, you've started Homey, you're a dad now. How do you think anyone listening to this can go make themselves absolutely indispensable in the age of AI?
Mm. It's a great question. I think like my whole thing is like, especially from like a change making, lens. I think it's, this idea that, and I'm really passionate about this, that like, just figuring out like what can your something for someone be, and the power of small acts. And there's this quote I love, which is around like, and I do a lot of presentations, sort of starting out with that, like, it's from a writer who had a pen name George Eliot, but was actually a woman called Mary Ann Evans, and it's something about like, what do we exist for if not to make life less difficult for someone else? And I think this idea of like making change, or like it doesn't have to be, wholesale or kind of this grandiose sort of, gesture. It is those small actions and the power of the collective. So my whole thing is like, if you have the ability to go out of your way to make someone's life a bit easier, day, week, month, whatever it may be, then why not? So I just feel like that's kind of I like that to be the message, is that it's not about trying to tackle everything in its entirety, but what if we all just focus on one other person? And we all know that when you help one person, it's more than that, because they often go on. And we know that um, to be the case, because so many people that we work with end up back in our sector as, a youth worker or, whatnot, when they've had that lived
Mm,
experience, which is really powerful. But I just feel that that's kind of the approach, and we can be so overwhelmed by all that's happening in the world, the many conflicts and challenges. It can be really consuming, but I think if you consider just bring it back to self and realize in some ways how insignificant we are, but we're also so significant, but our ability to be able to just go, well, I'm just going to focus on one person or one gesture or one deed, and see where that leads me. So that's kind of sorry,
yeah.
I mean, it's sort of a bit romantic maybe, but
No, and that's we need that because the tech bros are less romantic, whereas the human family like you, I mean, I just hear what you say. I'm like, who wouldn't want to live with those ideals? Like, it's beautiful. It's so wonderful. It's connection. And like, it's funny, interesting. You're talking about like, the kids that you've brought through the pathways, and their A to B journey isn't linear, and they might not even end up B. But that's kind of what you've done as well. You kind of you've all gone all over the place to get somewhere. It's maybe even more beautiful than when you thought B would be.
100%. Yeah. Where you start is not where you finish. I always say that as well. But the key to getting started is getting started, right? It's just like, our whole, you can see 10 years, but literally one conversation, and just actually getting down to someone's level, shaking their hand, looking them in the eye and treating them with respect, where that actually led us. So again, I sort of come back to these small gestures, these small actions, and the ripple effect of that. It's really powerful.